go.
go.
Daniel, thank you very much for taking your time
Sure
here
thing,
at
thank
the
you.
Smarter E and Power to Drive conference, hosting the battery expedition vehicle and talking to the leaders of our field on innovation and e-mobility. Today we want to talk about charging and what Zaptec delivers.
Yeah.
But before we jump into that discussion, let's talk about you and how you found into e-mobility.
I think it happened at the worst time, but also the best time, which was the COVID era, so to speak.
Best time?
Well, best time and worst time because I think it caused a lot of people to change. I was in consumer electronics before, and I come from a very, very small town, and technology was always interesting to me, especially when you don't think about it in a city landscape where everything's available at all times, and in many cases 24/7.
Yeah.
But how do you drive solar and energy and EV charging forward in rural areas? And people started getting e-bikes and electric cars, and there were incentives. And I was really interested in the industry, but also I always loved being somewhere where it was just about to hit, where it wasn't the biggest industry yet, but you could be part of that journey. And that was 2020. And ever since then, it's been quite the wild ride, especially in Germany. But I still think a positive outlook for the next couple of years as well.
Yeah, okay, before we come to the outlook, let's have a discussion on Zaptec's innovation and how you're contributing to get to a positive outlook. So what is the innovation that you're providing to propel us forward?
So there's two. One is the exciting one. One is the many people will call them boring, but they're important. And the exciting one is...
You have to sell it more.
I am trying PR team. No, I think when we started many years ago in Norway, Norway is the number one EV market, and seeing the registration numbers almost hitting 100% is kind of a slap in the face compared to what we're faced with in Europe. And we basically build systems for the times where EV adoption is just about to start. So we have very simple portfolio, but we started basically creating a system where you might only have a demand for one charger or two, but you could scale it limitless.
Consumer side or commercial side?
Both. Okay. So on one end, of course, the single home charger is very straightforward. If you go around this event, there's hundreds of companies who can sell you an AC charger. But we basically built a system that allows you to kind of modularly extend from one chargers up to 1,000, not just from the hardware side, but you could basically install a backplate system, which means you can do the electrification of a building. And you just keep adding chargers on these docking stations, so to speak, when you have more demand. The number one reason in Germany why people don't get big infrastructure is the cost up front.
Okay, let's clarify this for a second. So you're building AC chargers, right? And what do you mean with backup and kind of the platform approach that allows a modular scalability of a charging site?
Yeah, so most chargers or most installations fail in Germany because a lot of people rent, right? They don't own a single apartment, a single home, but they are in a building with an underground parking infrastructure, which maybe has 50 spots. So let's say it's not people who rent, but people who own these apartments. Each thing that gets installed, gets purchased, or where there's an investment requires everyone to agree, or a majority. In many cases, there might be 3 EV drivers, but the rest is not willing to invest in something. They don't know if they will buy an EV in a few years. So we basically invented a system where we kind of have, let's say, the base plate of the charger separate from the charging unit itself. So you're able to install these upfront at a low cost.
Yeah.
And by the time there is demand and the individual person wants or has an EV, you can just add the physical charging unit onto the platform, which means the installer comes once to do the drilling, lay down the cables, do the installation, but you can always keep on adding a charger afterwards to an existing load balancing, to an existing infrastructure, and without having actually an installer come again, make a mess, drill a hole, and also add cost because he comes for each charger individually.
But you have to have the plan on where the charging poles might be added or
not even. So you could use a VLAN flat cable. You just pull it across the wall, and you can just basically add the extensions with the backplates. Modularity, yeah.
Sounds smart.
And that's a hardware side. And then software side, we basically have something we call phase balancing on the charging unit. We have patented it too. Just putting that out there, which basically means in bigger installations, no matter if there's limited power or not, we're able to dynamically switch and distribute the charging loads across 3 phases. And that works really well, especially in bigger projects. We have, I think, one in Oslo with almost 400 chargers in one installation. But it also works well if you have a building that is maybe not that modern and you want to install 50 chargers at a workplace. So to summarize, we're trying to make very simple products that work very straightforward, but do a lot in the background. Keep it lean, and of course, kind of separate that between system charging and more basic home charging. So
all right, gotcha. So a critical question, because I think AC charging is not a rocket science anymore in the regard that people are talking about megawatt charging. There are many proponents of DC. Nevertheless, I see the use case, of course, and to have qualitative components there and the solutions that deliver the energy at a working site or etc. So no question about that. But what I fear is we're talking about in this expedition about the European e-mobility ecosystem and having a European-driven market and the solutions coming from the market itself. So like an ecosystem. What is the competition that is arising in Asia right now that is also entering the market here? And because, as I said, this is not a technology that is really new anymore, but it's like, like where's your, from an entrepreneurial point, where's your selling point? Like how can you stand out between or against other Asian competitors?
I think there's been a lot of moments where industry or location of industry shifted drastically, also to Asia specifically. I do believe, however, that there are a lot of companies doing great things in Europe in every aspect, from battery and research as well to charging and solar.
Yes.
I think it's about what the others don't do that we do, which comes down to regulation. I've been to San Francisco a few weeks ago and drove with the Waymo self-driving cars. And I was assuming I would sit in there and feel very uncomfortable. Living in Germany for a few years, you're known to follow rules and orders. And, the idea of sitting there and seeing a wheel just turn might make you a bit uncomfortable. It didn't. And it felt very normal. And if you look at countries or other continents, just in Europe, if you want to do an AC charger, and let's call it the more simple one to start. You have German calibration law, Mess- und Eichrecht. You have UK cybersecurity law. You have France with the shutter system. Each country tries to make their own rules and their own regulations rather than, number one, aligning it on a European level, which to me still, I think being Europe, it should be a European system, a European approach, but also follow a strategy altogether if it's incentives. If it's a strategy or a clear path forward, I think even the push to bring EVs basically to be the number one car sold compared to combustion engines, it seems like no one really believes that this won't change again or will be adjusted. And I think we don't follow a clear enough path as Europe together. And that's, I think, in tech in general, it needs to be more unity across Europe because that's what the US does, that's what China does. But it does seem to be hindered back by regulation and also by not all sitting at one table in Europe.
Okay. How are you contributing to solving that issue?
So we started joining a bunch of associations and boards, and even within Germany, that gets a bit difficult because there's like 10 or more. So each country has their EV boards, and what we're really trying to do at this event as well is usually you go here and it's a very competitive landscape. When we see competitors with their branded T-shirts walking past us, we usually invite them on our booth and have a coffee with them because, we're all doing this to get to a point where we'll look back and we make fun of those days where, maybe the power to drive part was the smallest of the whole Smarter E because it was still smaller than the solar segment. I think we'll look back at a time where the car sales in Germany were where they are now and remember where we came from. And there needs to be competition. It's the same in the OEM segment, the same in the phone business, everywhere. There needs to be a choice. But I believe that we all need to talk more with each other. And, vehicle to grid and all those things, I believe will be a mess from the beginning because there's going to be companies all doing their own proprietary systems with OEMs rather than building one that everyone can contribute to. And
I think in this lies great potential. Right now, you can argue if this is a challenge to figure out who is a competitor, who is open for competition, perhaps. But if we do our job well, and I hope the campaign will also contribute to that, to align the competences, to support another, to add the competences synergistically, then we will be able to look back one day and say like, those were rough times, but now we made it, and we have an ecosystem built in Europe which we can rely on and which our mobility thrives on. So what is your call to action if you would have one advice for industry?
I think might be two, and of course one is to not see each other all the time as competitors, but as let's say more players on the same mission, which it really is. I mean, of course, there's the economic impact. We're all companies, you know. We're still, of course, making money, wanting to do so. The other is the mission on its own, and I would argue there's a lot of passionate people in this field, from the technical side to the commercial side.
Yeah.
But most importantly, there's this beautiful German word, Reichweitenangst, range anxiety.
Yeah, range anxiety.
And I think there's still a lot of doubts in the public on the move to e-mobility and what it will do, what the benefits really will be. And I think for that, safety is a big aspect. We actually did a kind of a panel at our own booth yesterday, and not to the happiness of the PR team, I said, I think that if you walk around every event, you see always like a nice wall with a nice product, and everyone takes pictures, and it's the next big thing. The question is always, can you scale it? Can you make 100,000 or 1 million units of it? If there's an issue, do you have a support team where people pick up? Does the charger have any safety features? And I think that's the boring stuff I didn't mention before. Is we do a lot of stuff where you don't see it. It takes a lot of work, but it comes with kind of the Norwegian pride, I call it, as well. You know, we've sensors like humidity sensors, temperature sensors in our products that measure in real time if there's anything going on. Because exactly, because if your phone dies, it dies. But if your charger explodes, it's a huge issue. And especially people who are against or not on board yet with EV charging and EV cars, they are the first ones bring up these arguments. What happens with the battery? You know?
Yes, of course.
That's your field.
So then the claim or the advice then would be to summarize this, to focus on quality.
Focus on quality, focus on safety. But also, while you bring, I mean, I would argue that anyone who is 10 years now, 8 years from now, when they start driving, we need to make V2G a reality, and not one company with one OEM. And it needs to be one standard. But for that, there needs to be a unity in this industry.
All right.
And to realize that we might talk about companies that we see as competitors. There's going to be a lot of consolidation in the market, but there's going to be also companies in 4 years that we don't even know of yet. Car companies, charger companies, solar companies. And we're at the beginning, and especially it's such a, let's call it an industry that is debated by some people still, if this is the right move. And, you know, I think there needs to be more unity and pulling together, because there's a lot of great ideas, but you got to bring them together.
I think I couldn't close this in a better way, with more precise words. So thank you very much, Daniel, for
thank you very much for
this
your time.
discussion. And yeah, looking forward on the trip, exploring the competences that are out there in Europe, potentially meeting Zaptec.
Hopefully.
Also in
You're
Norway.
welcome anytime.
And yeah, see you again one day.
Thank you so much.